Most people would probably say wealth is the accumulation of power and money. But what if we redefined wealth in a different way? What if in doing that, we virtually eliminate poverty, reduce the threat of climate change, and empower everyone to live their best life? Meet the changemakers who are doing just that for the new economy.
We self-organize ourselves around what we care about. Wall Street firms, capital-centric firms, are organized around capital. They're organized around the notion that financial wealth is the highest good and more is always better when it comes to financial wealth. And so let's organize our economy around this principle. But in the emerging economy, it's called the new economy. I call it the generative economy, which means that it's life-serving. We have to reorganize ourselves around life. Community life, family life, employees, we need to be focused on employee well-being, we need to focus on ecological well-being.
The whole economic system doesn't work for Indigenous people. When you see the world holistically and you see your job as living in balance and harmony, these are fundamental design principles of an Indigenous economy versus the kind of competition and maximum yield principles that you're looking at that are structured into the existing. And so in Western economy, you get money if you need money, which is why a bank loans to rich people, but not to poor people, because what's rewarded is the accumulation. The system is designed to reward accumulation, so if you already have it, you get more.
Western colonizer society is very much individualism and individual wealth accumulation and individual asset accumulation and what's best for me. It's something that's so foreign because it's not rooted in anything that's in our value system. It was always about the greater good. It was always about what's best for the whole nation, what's best for the earth, and not what's best for the individual.
We did a flow of funds studies, and we saw that less than 7 cents on the dollar actually stayed in Pine Ridge, with 93 cents on the dollar going to the border town economy. That really sparked, at that moment, in that economic development tribal college conference, they began talking about some kind of lending mechanism. They wanted to do a lending program so they could capture their own economy and begin holding some of that economy and have the turnover, get at least a one-time turnover of the dollar on the reservation, which really and truly is the story behind the Lakota Fund. We didn't have the name microlending. We didn't even know what kind of loan fund we were actually going to do, but I heard that loud and clear. There another Indian man that was getting his master's degree in economic development, and I started talking to him, and he created this informal sector study, and he went out and basically the question was, what do you do to make money? And he began looking at 83% of the households earned about 87% of their income from these informal activities. They made coffins for the cemetery, they welded crosses for the cemetery, they mended fences, they did hair, they babysat, they sold lunches to the Indian Health Service or the Bureau of Indian Affairs people. There was 118 vibrant activities that were being done every day to make money. And I was like, that's it. That's what we want to lend to. This is it. And it was just all there, all of it in front of us, all this creativity, entrepreneurship.
And Lakota Funds was the first one to achieve that status, then becoming a certified Native CDFI. And that's all about, access to credit and the asset building work that needs to be done in these underserved communities. And of course, the Native communities are, among those. There's a lot of that underground cash economy that still exists. And that's partly because of the fact that until Lakota Federal Credit Union was chartered, there was not a single bank, federally insured financial institution depository on the Pine Ridge Reservation. And I thought a credit union is different enough than a bank, because it is member owned, and not to make some bank board members, owners wealthy. It's for the benefit of those own people, those own account holders.
Indigenous groups who were at the end of 2016, 2017, fighting in Standing Rock against oil pipelines that were encroaching on indigenous lands, that were destroying the earth, poisoning the water. So in solidarity with what we were witnessing, activists in cities like Seattle and Los Angeles expanded the front lines and took the fight to our local governments and said, by virtue of these banks who are financing these oil pipelines, banking with our city, we were in essence funding the destruction of communities and the planet. And the only true solution was to divest from Wall Street altogether by creating a bank that was owned by the people, accountable, transparent, with socially and environmentally responsible mandates. Okay, so a public bank is a financial institution that is owned by a local government, a city, a region, or a state. And the deposit base for a public bank are the taxes, the fees, the fines, the funds, the revenue that our city accrues, which then leverages to create loans just like any other bank. But the difference between a public bank and a private bank is with a public bank, the interest and profit belongs to the community. So rather than it gets siphoned out of state by private Wall Street bankers and private shareholders, that money stays here and gets recirculated back into our local communities so that we can fund things that we need: affordable housing, solutions to homelessness, a Green New Deal for Los Angeles.
We are a national Native-led nonprofit, and so, we are running 7 different programs. The direct service provision would be where we are providing seed funding for children's savings accounts. We know that by providing a $100 opening account deposit, this is not going to pay for college, but if families are able to put a little bit of money in, some are putting in $5, $10 a month, some maybe at birthday or at a special holiday. And then if you can cobble that together with other outside scholarships, we're trying to start the youth when they're younger with opening the accounts, and then help their families to think that it can be an option to go to school, and the kids too. So it's kind of about changing the expectations and trying to build in more hope there. To our knowledge, are the largest seed-funded Native Children's Savings Account program for youth, Native youth in the country.
African American mutual aid started pretty much on the boats when we were dragged here forcibly in chains. We were helping each other. So from then we had this sense, I think probably from the way that African cultures had also had a sense of mutuality and communalism, and then we practiced it wherever we could. Capitalism just allows a few people to make it. Everybody else gets left behind. Then we need a strategy like cooperative ownership, because there you have broad ownership, you have community wealth.
Once an employee becomes an employee owner, which is a 1-year eligibility period, and then he or she is voted upon by the existing worker owners, they immediately begin to build equity in the company. They're immediately fully vested for profit sharing.
The initiative started in 2018. The fund was created, and the backbone of the fund was defined to basically acquire small businesses in the community, convert them to employee ownership, and support them in the evergreen network of other cooperatives. It really takes till the point of profit sharing for it to sink in, like, wow, this is real. Wow, I'm electing my own coworkers to the board of directors. These trucks I'm driving around in to put insulation in or do a home energy audit, they're mine.
We have our Green Team Cooperative. What its primary mission is just landscaping, in the community. And then the other one primarily is the Community Production Center. It's a light scale manufacturing that's based upon digital fabrication. What most people understand is 3D printing.
Kodiak Electric is a cooperative, and we're owned by what we call the members. So when you have a service or meter with Kodiak Electric, you are a owner of the company. The benefit is that any profits that are made by the company are redistributed to the owners as capital credits or dividends, I suppose you could call it. This year is projected to be a 99% renewable energy. Wind and water.
The Farm to College program is one of the first in the country. 93% of the food that we served was through a wholesaler from anywhere in the world. Now we're purchasing over 20% of our food on a $3 million budget, local being defined as the state of Montana. One of the purposes of our program was to strengthen the agricultural economic development in the state of Montana. Of course, the volume that we go through, I couldn't have my food buyers call 30 farmers to get 300 pounds of tomatoes. And so this co-op started, and it's been fantastic. I mean, that one call, and we can get all of the items that we need. And they also then began selling to the local restaurants, and now they have a very viable business enterprise that helps the farmers.
So the Buy Nothing Project is an international network of hyper-local gift economies that are based online. Right now, each of them exists online as a Facebook group. You go to Facebook and you look up your neighborhood name and find our Facebook group there and join it. Once you're approved into the group, you can offer things that are freely given with no strings attached at all and no expectation of any future payback in any form. You can ask for things given that way from other people, and you can share your gratitude for things that you've received in the group. Right now we have, in one of our groups, we have 2 different people are putting together Buy Nothing weddings. So they're collecting up their dresses, decorations, glasses, silverware, plate. What I wanted was a gift economy in which the real wealth that we're building is this web of connections between us. That's the kind of culture that I think is, to me, seems much more sustainable, and it's looking at human kindness as wealth and as what we're trying to build up in our groups and not just stuff.
Our Exchange Portland is a group of people from our local community that have banded together, actually over 1,000 people now. And we each are willing to provide services or expertise in exchange for hours. For example, I would provide an hour of physical therapy treatment. There's a whole list of services that are local to the Exchange. We went sailing on the J&E Riggin one summer in Penobscot Bay for a week. We've had help with landscaping, massage therapy, and healthcare for my wife and for myself.
Anybody can join Our World. You can look us up online, fill out a simple form, and then you can be part of the Our World movement. You can look on the map and find out if there is a service exchange or a time bank near you. If there isn't one, there are all kinds of steps and information on our website. There's all kinds of videos, there's all kinds of articles. We give you the software, and we like to train people in groups. There's online videos, and there's also Skype training that Stephen will do, or maybe another person will help you with. And then locally, start exchanging.
We all were born in Africa, in the same place. We're either all brothers and sisters or cousins or something, and we're part of one family.
Our unhoused relatives don't need more policing, right? We don't need for the city and for the police to criminalize poverty. We need connection. We need relationality. We need those relationships. We need to be a community and take care of each other.
The Tampa Bay area, Hillsborough County in particular, was really the epicenter of the second wave of hardcore homophobic organizing. It was a group called the American Family Association. So when we took it on in Tampa and in Hillsborough County, there were a lot of other places around the state that wanted to kind of learn the lessons, be prepared for what their talking points were, what were going to be their tactics and strategies. And it had made national news. You can see how far Tampa's come. Now it has an out lesbian police chief, but that definitely was not the case back then.
I was the project director for the law and standards, and we produced the Missouri report. So what happened then is, armed with that study, the Missouri public defenders, God bless their souls, stood up to those judges. He says, I need relief for 16 public defenders pursuant to that methodology. Thank God he found a judge that was about to retire. And the judge says, you're right, that those 16 public defenders are violating the law, violating their ethical obligations under the law. Do that anymore. It's a caseload standard now that has been validated in the courts as a result of the case that arose out of St. Louis County.
I was checking the numbers on that office's wait list recently and saw that it was gone. And I called the attorney who runs the office and I said, where's your wait list? I can't find it. It's not in the database. And she said, well, we don't have it anymore. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have it? How did you do that? She said, you gave me 2 more attorneys. That's how I did it.
On our 34 acres, we have a regenerative community development. It's one of our 8 initiatives. Currently, we have 21 single-family homes, 7 are complete. Our broader goal for this community is to be net zero. We have 7 homeowners. All of them are first-generation homeowners. Not perpetuating these ideas of home ownership because it's asset accumulation for your family, or you can build equity and all of these things in a very westernized way, but really trying to tie it back to being caretakers of our homes. And what does that mean to plan for future generations? Because we always thought generationally. We want to raise the standard in building. We want to raise the standard in construction. We want to raise the standard in design. Like you'll notice, each of our 7 homes are in a circle with an opening to the east, because as Ocheti Shakowi, that's how our camps used to traditionally camp. In those 7, the 7 council fires, that's how they camped, with the opening to the east. So we wanted to, in our design of our community, reflect those values and those practices of our people.
So CLT Plus One is a pilot project for DCLT, and it's the idea of combining CLT homes, so our traditional CLT home where the owner owns the home and we own the land, with an accessory dwelling unit. But our plan is to construct new housing and an accessory dwelling on the same lot and sell them both. We would manage that rental property for the homeowner, but it would also provide some increased revenue and equity for the homeowner.
In November of 2019, we actually had our vote on Resolution 126R19, which was to establish reparations for the Black community in Evanston using the cannabis sales tax revenue. What today is a $25,000 direct benefit for housing equity that will build wealth immediately through equity.
So this arose from this tent camp community that started as a protest in a downtown parking lot in Olympia. And it was a protest against an anti-homeless ordinance that the city had passed. They had this idea of having tiny little houses and then a shared community building that would have a kitchen and showers and laundry facility, which is, in a sense, exactly what we've built. The big difference between being homeless on the street or in the woods, around here a lot of people are homeless in the woods, and being homeless in the camp is the difference between loneliness and community. So it was really interesting, for me at least, to learn that there are 2 fundamental human needs. One is housing, the other is community, and that they're equally important.
Regenerative agriculture is approaching food systems and food production from the point of longevity, of being able to be adaptable and not working against the land and nature, but actually being a part of it, working within it. So we can have the longest run of success, not just for ourselves who are producing food and implementing the food systems, but for the land itself, that the land is also being provided with benefits from our practices on the lands.
So we're here at Kewakbal Gardens, which is a 1 acre teaching and production farm. So we do a lot of mixed vegetable production. We do a lot of egg production as well. We have some hens out here. And our goal was originally to teach the community how to grow their own food. And so having to balance the needs of like people are hungry now, but also trying to create systems that are more sustainable and more future thinking. And so the way we do that is to increase local food access, is to increase the amount of tribal food producers. And so we've started a farmer training program, really geared at getting people ready to start their own food production.
Buffalo were everything to us. They were our economy. They were our source of food, shelter, clothing, spiritual items. The Woolakota Regenerative Buffalo Range is a 28,000 acre buffalo range that will be home to 1,500 animals. It will be the largest Native American owned and managed buffalo herd in the world.
I'll start with Freedom Farm. Two dimensions. One, producing a baseline of food for our membership, right, through our own internal community, CSA, supported agriculture modern community. And the second is producing enough, of core commodities to go to market. And then the other piece is teaching members of the community how to go back to some basic farming. And the aim and objective there is for us to kind of create our own community supply chain. Something that's in development is the People's Grocery that we're in the process of developing. That it will be one of the cornerstones of this whole food sovereignty program in West Jackson.
We're at a place right now where we're all trying to decide, okay, how does one person make a difference? I don't know, but I really think that artists have a unique responsibility to look at things differently and processing very differently. And then through that processing, there's an articulation, whether it's tangible, whether it's a performance installation like we're doing in Washington, D.C., to look at things in a creative way that may have some really interesting answers.
Positive Independent Parenting is an 8-lesson curriculum. The first lesson is asked people to examine where they learn to parent. And if you learn to parent in boarding school, or if you learn to parent from people who were raised in boarding school, you didn't get a chance to learn the rich traditions that teach that children are sacred beings.
Our language is embedded with our life ways and our spirituality. We have a kindergarten through first grade total immersion classroom. We are designing a truly Lakota total immersion school.
The ultimate goal is to get our kids to be intermediate fluent in Lakota. We're going to speak our language, so that way we sustain our fluency. But we also start to take back our space. We start to take back our space that always had belonged to us.
So they're really taking what they've learned here about healthy eating habits, but also like cultural eating habits. And I'm hoping, all of that together, we really become a healthy nation. Because we know the statistics of our chronic diseases, our mortality rates, the food apartheid. We know those stats. So how are we working with our kids to really change those? Because they're the future.
We still have to meet state standards to be qualified as a school. So testing-wise, they're in all of their things, reading, math, science, they're all testing at least one grade level ahead, which is amazing. But it all comes back to what they're learning.
My vision is that we're going to have a whole bunch of change makers, coming about from the school as they see and learn from a different lens. Because growing up, I didn't see myself. I didn't see my people's history.
It was a real honor
to design classes that were going to reflect the students within them and their history, the stories, their culture, their lived experiences now. And that's what we did. We did it through literature, we did it through social studies, we did it through art. And what ended up happening is the students found themselves, educational outcomes went through the roof. Students were graduating, in the high 90% from all of our high schools that we taught at.
The political economy in which we all live has already passed its end date. Signs of dysfunction are everywhere. And so another system is coming. Some kind of systemic transformation is in the offing. And the real question, I think, for those who genuinely care about others and care about the future, our children or other people's children, future generations, is what kind of system should we transition to? George Mason University has a role to play in hastening the kind of systemic transition that will benefit everybody here, not just the elites. One thing that we're very consciously focused on is not only partnering up with existing initiatives, but also seeing startups come out of the research that we're doing here, so that students, when they graduate and go back to their communities or to other parts of the region, they don't just go into business for themselves, they do it for each other and for the communities. They form cooperatives, they take a different approach than they might otherwise.
If you want to change the system, we've got to democratize wealth. And if you want to do it in a way that's democratic, you start at the bottom, community by community by community. But that's not changing the system, that's laying groundwork. And one way I think about it is in the prehistory of the New Deal, the 30 years before the New Deal. There was experimentation at the state and local, they called it the laboratories of democracy. But when the right time came, the same principles that had been tested and refined and played with became principles that could be extended to national level or regional level. So, for instance, you got labor law in that case, which was experimented with in a couple of states. Labor legislation, union legislation, what became Social Security. All that was experimented with first and then transferred to much larger level.
It ended up the whole microenterprise and community development loan fund movement took off across the country. CDFIs were the community development financial institutions that were all put together under that banner were like community credit unions, community banks, the micro loan funds we were doing, a lot of the housing lending, mortgage lending people in the low-income communities. So it was a range of different financial institutions that were gearing their operations to match the economy in the community where they were setting up. It was the first organized, systematic questioning of our financial systems and what were their purpose and what was their use if this was an entire group of people left out of the market. So as the Lakota Fund was up and making its loans, I was approached by a Wayne Silby and a John Guffey, and they were the founders of the Calvert Social Investment Fund. And this is about mid-90s, and they had heard about the Lakota Fund, and they were looking under their mutual fund umbrella at some way to work with poor people was their idea. I went on the board not knowing exactly how a mutual fund worked, and one of the things I would talk about at the first board meeting was poor people being credit worthy. And one of the things that they talked about was doing something like the Lakota Fund on a national scale, only getting the investors into it. I ended up, again, writing up the business plan for looking at taking 1% of our portfolio and investing it directly into the community development financial institutions. And we created this high social impact investment within our mutual fund. Then we decided to move it over to the foundation, the Calvert, which is now called Capital Strategies. Calvert Capital Strategies is a separate foundation. This was the only private sector vehicle for individual investors to invest in these kinds of community financial institutions. And we were able to get FDIC status of it insured, and it became a class of its own. It's community notes. So anybody can go to a broker or themselves just say, I want to invest in community notes.
We really believe, and I really believe, that what we have to be working for is a balance in all things, in the way we think, in the way we act, in our relationships to one another and the earth. And so that's what we're actively fighting for here, is a restoration of that balance.